Hello, welcome to BBC World News. I'm Alice Baxter. Our top story this hour to Business Live. Now, in just a few hours' time, the World Economic Forum in Davos will hear the speech that they've all been waiting for. The US President Donald Trump is expected to repeat his call for an American-first approach.
And we join Alice Baxter. Alice.
Thanks, David. Paul Batang is the former British High Commissioner to South Africa, and he joins us live here on the studio. You served in South Africa for 4 years. You obviously worked very closely with Nelson Mandela. What are your memories of the man? The European Central Bank is just moments away from announcing further measures to stimulate the Eurozone economy. And yet the whole concept of negative interest rates is hugely divisive. The front cover of the FT this morning, leading bankers from all across Europe calling it a dangerous experiment. What are his options to try to limit the potential dangers of a further cut to the banks?
Sure. So on that front, it's
newsroom and talk to our economics correspondent Andrew Walker, who's got the latest numbers for us. Andrew, as someone was just saying there, expectations are widely that the ECB will cut the deposit rate by 10 basis points to minus 0.4%. Have you got those numbers for us?
Yes, indeed. And the deposit facility, the
rate. We've been told by the Reuters news agency that the situation in those talks for a deal with Britain is being described as critical, and a meeting that was due to take place at 1500 GMT, that's been postponed to dinner, and leaders are now being told to book hotels for the night to stay on through to Saturday. So it looks like those crunch Brexit talks have a way to go.
Alice is back with more business news, and you're going to be talking all about Valentine's Day.
That's absolutely right, George. Who said that romance was dead? The business of love is booming. Because we keep hearing this, that if no trade agreement is reached within the 2-year Brexit negotiation window, the UK will fall back on WTO rules. What does that actually mean, and will it be a disaster?
Well, it means two different things, really. If we are in the WTO, it's quite big.
So just to be clear, in the absence of single market membership, if no comprehensive free trade agreement, when we're talking about the non-financial services sector, which we are today, you actually think the biggest potential danger is non-tariff barriers?
Both for services and for goods.
Especially getting the younger demographic, which everybody wants.
It's not for want of trying, isn't it? Advertisers really want to get in front of these younger viewers, but they haven't cracked the conundrum of how you monetise the likes of YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, etc.
Now, it looks busy there, Alice.
John, it's really busy. The atmosphere is just wonderful here in the heart of London. Behind me, you can just see the Mall, which, of course, saw witness to that exciting last few minutes of this stage 3 of the Tour de France. You see Germany's Marcel Kittel roaring to a sprint finish.
That banks don't matter.
And it's also these high levels of private debt relative to GDP that really concern you.
Yeah, that's the real thing. In global terms, here at the highest and reduce that debt burden.
So converting quantitative easing as we've known it in this country since March 2009 into people's quantitative easing, as you call it. Now, we are living in an age of austerity right across Europe. We've been told by the Chancellor, George Osborne, that we must turn the government's deficit into a surplus in order to avoid economic collapse. Is he completely wrong?
Absolutely wrong. Totally, absolutely wrong. And it just drives me balmy.
Now, financial concern focused primarily on the impact that Leave vote has had on global equity markets and currencies. Well, on Wall Street, markets opened a couple of hours ago now, and following the general trend, they sank, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average dropping some 500 points at the open. It's recovered slightly, but pound sterling, that's really been at the sharp end of markets. And yes, welcome to the BBC's 100 Women Conference, where I'm joined by two very special women to talk about the importance of the digital economy and what do you both see as the future of microblogging sites like Twitter or Weibo in China for business and also particularly for women around the world. Martha?
I think, judging by the number of tweets going on in this auditorium.
As you mentioned there, you've been involved in lots of campaigns to clean up sport, including the new FIFA Now campaign. But do you really think it's your place as a commercial business to become involved in the governance and the ethics of sport?
I do when a commercial business such as ours is...
Jamie, do you think you could actually be accused of hypocrisy in all of this? You are a campaigner for cleaning up sport, and yet your own product is a performance enhancer.
Oh, look, people chuck that at me all the time.
Explore ways as to whether that can be looked at differently, perhaps, going
So we're
forward.
talking about financial devolution here in a sense?
We're certainly going to be looking at that, yes. So
Hello there. Now, it's been a night of terror, violence and confusion in Paris as a series of attacks have taken place right across the French capital. Yeah. Men are finding ways to express themselves through more than just their ties and their socks.
Absolutely.
You, of course, are known for your iconic and very distinctive, very vibrant suits. You were creative director of Givenchy from 2004 to 2007. Mick Jagger and Jude Law, their fans. What is it about the suit that you think is so important to men?
For me, the suit is...
Now to Steve Webb, the Pensions Minister. He joins me live now. Many thanks for joining us here on the programme. It's pretty staggering, isn't it, that such a major player in the pensions industry believes that the government's got its fee cap wrong.
Well, we're in the middle of a consultation.
Close to all-time highs over in the US. Well, let's talk through all of this a little bit more with Alina Komilieva, the MD and Chief Economist at G+ Market Economics. Many thanks for joining us here in the studio. Let's talk a little bit about these OECD numbers, shall we? Because it's predicting Eurozone economic growth to edge up slightly to 1.1% in 2015 from 0.8% this year. More pessimistic than the EU's own numbers. Which, if either, do you think is correct?
I think that, if anything...
Well, that news conference is actually still ongoing. The world's press packed into that tiny room in Berlin. He now is Israel's ambassador to the UK, Daniel Taub. Many thanks for joining us here on the programme. I spoke to the Israeli government spokesman earlier, Mark Ragov, who explained that what Israel had wanted from these talks was for Tehran to cease all uranium enrichment. But that was never on the table. So what was Israel realistically wanting out of Geneva?
Well, we actually want what the Western governments...
Well, many thanks for that insight into what's been happening in Moscow today. Let's just move up the stairs now of New Broadcasting House. Because, of course, all of this initiates yet further debate, both in the US and here in Europe, as to whether or not this could be a precursor to more US involvement in Libya.
Well, that's certainly being discussed.
It's midday here in London, 7 in the morning in Washington and 8 p.m. in the Philippines, where aid agencies are scrambling to get vital supplies to survivors of Typhoon Haiyan.